Okay, I gotta make this quick. So let's talk about the recent House vote on the budget resolution.
Yes, please, let's talk about that because there is quite a bit of misinformation floating around out there.
The House just passed a 4.5 trillion tax cut plan backed by the President of the United States, President Trump. This plan includes eliminating taxes on tips, overtime, and Social Security benefits.
Nope. The plan doesn't include any of those things, actually, and this is exactly what I'm talking about when I say that there's a lot of misinformation floating around out there about what the House actually passed. And Brittany, I don't fault you specifically for thinking what you think, because a lot of congressional Republicans were tweeting and posting on various social media the very same things that you're talking about here, and they're just not true. In fact, when they got fact-checked on their social media platforms, they ended up deleting a lot of those posts. So let's actually talk about what reconciliation is, right? And what are the processes and steps to achieve it, which is what the Republicans are trying to do in Congress. To break it down in the simplest of form, a budget reconciliation bill is a bill that is not subject to a filibuster in the Senate. All it takes to pass a budget reconciliation bill is a simple majority in both chambers, half plus one in the Senate, half plus one in the House of Representatives, right? But way before it gets to a vote on the actual budget reconciliation bill, both chambers have to agree to a budget plan. In fact, Brittany, you even mentioned in the very beginning of your video that what was passed was a budget plan, not a law, not a piece of legislation, a plan, because budget resolutions are not legally binding. So here's the very simplified process of budget reconciliation. We'll take the chronological events of how it's occurring now. For example, the House passes a budget plan. This is the outline, this is the goal, this is where the bottom numbers we want to get to. Fine? That passes, goes to the Senate. The Senate must agree to and vote on and pass an identical budget plan. However, the Senate currently has a different idea of how they want to get around this, around how they want to pass budget reconciliation. They want to do two bills, two different budget reconciliation bills, instead of the House's idea for one big bill. Regardless of which route they go, they both have to vote on and pass identical budget plans. That is step one in a very lengthy process, and what the House passed was half of part one, okay? After those two identical plans are voted on and passed in both chambers, then the committees break off and they start writing their budget proposals on how to get to that bottom number, right? So they say, we want to cut this much money in expenditure, and we want 800 billion of it to come from energy and commerce, right? So those two committees will have to write a budget proposal to get to that number that was spelled out in the budget plan. Then, once again, both chambers will have to vote on their individual committee budgets, right? Vote and pass in the Senate, vote and pass in the House. Once all that is done, then the whole big bill gets put into reconciliation vote, which means that is the point that only a simple majority is required to pass the actual piece of legislation. Simple majority in the House, simple majority in the Senate. So when you hear Republicans saying Democrats voted against no tax on tips and no tax on overtime, that's wrong. What's also wrong is when you hear Democrats say that they're trying to cut $880 billion out of Medicaid. That's also wrong. Is it possible that those two provisions will be in the ultimate budget reconciliation bill? Sure, it's absolutely possible. But as of right now, there are zero specifics on how the numbers are going to get to where they want to get to. They're just agreeing on where the end goal should be. That's all. So we have a lot of time yet before an actual budget reconciliation bill is voted on and before we can say anybody voted against or for anything, right? There's a lot of politics left to play. I hope this helped.